You ever hear the one about the two old friends who became bitter enemies and then died on the exact same day? It sounds like a tall tale, something a writer would cook up to make a story feel complete. But this isn't fiction. It's the story of John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, two men who literally built the foundation of this country. They were the fire and the ink of the American Revolution. But as the years rolled by, their friendship didn't just bend, it broke. They went years, decades even, without saying a single word to each other. But then, history did something eerie. On July 4th, 1826, exactly 50 years to the day after they signed the Declaration of Independence, both men breathed their last, hours apart. Now, before you tell me no way, let me pull up a chair and tell you how these two giants found their way back to each other, just in time for the end. If you saw them walking down the street in Philadelphia back in 1776, you'd think they were a comedy duo. You had John Adams. He was short, a bit stout, and had a temper like a tea kettle about to boil over. He was a New Englander through and through, blunt, honest, a man who'd tell you exactly what he thought of you, even if you didn't ask. And then you had Thomas Jefferson, tall, quiet, a Virginian who moved with a sort of graceful silence. He didn't like to give speeches. He liked to write, while Adams was the Atlas of the Revolution, pushing and pulling everyone toward independence. Jefferson was the pen. Back then, they were brothers in arms. They spent their nights talking about liberty and their days arguing with the king. They were the great collaboration. But as any of us who've lived a little bit know, sometimes the people you work with best are the ones who can hurt you the most. The trouble started, like most things do, with politics. Once the war was won and the dust settled, these two brothers found themselves on opposite sides of a fence. Adams believed in a strong central government. He wanted order. Jefferson, well, he was a man of the soil. He wanted the power kept close to home, in the hands of the states and the people. By the time the election of 1800 rolled around, the gloves were off, and folks, it got ugly. The things they called each other in the newspapers back then, it would make a modern politician blush. Jefferson's people called Adams a hideous hermaphroditical character. Adams' people called Jefferson an atheist and a libertine. Jefferson ended up winning that election. And Adams? He was so heartbroken, so bitter, that he snuck out of Washington in a carriage at 4 a.m., just so he wouldn't have to watch his old friend take the oath. For the next 12 years, total silence. Not a letter, not a greeting, nothing. Imagine that. 12 years of the cold shoulder. Adams went back to his farm in Massachusetts, and Jefferson eventually retired to his mountain in Virginia. They both got older. Their hair went white. Their joints started to ache. They were both great men, but they were lonely in their greatness. Adams would sit in his library, thinking about the old days. He'd tell people, "I always loved Jefferson, and I believe he loved me, but he was too proud to be the first to reach out. And Jefferson, he was just as stubborn. He was busy building the University of Virginia, but he kept track of what Adams was doing. It was like a high-stakes game of who's gonna blink first. They were both waiting for a bridge to be built, and eventually, an old mutual friend decided he'd had enough of their nonsense. That bridge builder was a man named Benjamin Rush. He'd been there with them in 1776. He started writing to them both, basically telling them, "Look, you're both getting old. It's time to stop this foolishness." Finally, in 1812, Adams took the plunge. He sent a short, simple letter to Jefferson. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly. He just talked about some homespun cloth. But Jefferson, he didn't miss a beat. He wrote back immediately. And just like that, the dam broke. For the next 14 years, they wrote. They wrote about philosophy. They wrote about the good old days. They wrote about their families and their fears for the country. They became the sages of Quincy and Monticello. They were two old lions, sitting on opposite sides of the country, roaring softly to one another through the mail. Fast forward to the summer of 1826. The United States was getting ready for a party, a big one, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. July 4th, the country was vibrating with excitement, parades, speeches, fireworks. But in Massachusetts and Virginia, the lights were dimming. John Adams was 90 years old. Thomas Jefferson was 83. Both were confined to their beds. The nation wanted them to attend the celebrations, but they just didn't have the strength. The city of Washington sent invitations, begging them to come. Jefferson declined, but in his final letter, he wrote about the light of liberty. As the 4th of July approached, it was almost as if both men were holding their breath. They weren't just hanging on for life. They were hanging on for the anniversary. July 4, 1826. In the morning, Thomas Jefferson was drifting in and out of consciousness. He woke up briefly, looked at his doctor, and asked one final question. "Is it the 4th?" The doctor told him it was. Jefferson nodded, and then he slipped away. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Hundreds of miles away, in Massachusetts, John Adams was still fighting. He didn't know Jefferson was gone. A massive thunderstorm was rolling across the New England sky. The thunder sounded like the cannons of the Revolution. As the sun began to set, Adams drew a ragged breath. He whispered his last words, 4 short words that have echoed through history ever since. Thomas Jefferson still survives. Then, he closed his eyes for the last time. He was wrong. Jefferson had died 5 hours earlier. But in a way, he was right, because as long as one lived, the other lived in his heart. When the news finally spread across the country, people didn't just mourn, they were stunned. The odds of both men dying on that exact day, the 50th anniversary, are almost impossible to calculate. Folks back then didn't call it a coincidence. They called it a divine sign. They saw it as the heavens themselves, giving a final salute to the men who had birthed a nation. The rivalry was over. The friendship was sealed in the stars. They had lived through the fire, survived the fallout, and in the end, they walked into the great beyond, together, just like they had walked into Independence Hall all those years before. You know, there's a lesson in that story for all of us. Life is short, politics is noisy, but friendship and the things we build together, that's what lasts. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were as different as night and day, but they found a way back to the same page before the book closed. I hope you enjoyed this look at the most incredible coincidence in American history. If this story touched a chord, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the President's Stories. We've got plenty more where that came from, stories of grit, heart, and the folks who made this country what it is today. Until next time, take care of your old friends and keep the fire of liberty burning. Thanks for watching.